Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday, the show where we take your user-submitted powerlifting videos, we toss them up on the screen behind us, and we give you some powerlifting critique. Now, for those of you who have maybe seen this show before, tuned in before, I usually do these solo, but we thought, hey, we've got Danny here, one of the other Calgary Barbell coaches, and she's gonna join me in helping to give y'all some real good powerlifting advice. So we're gonna get started with the video that we left off on last time, which was Uriel. He's doing some deadlifts. So pull that up here. All right, so Danny, what do you think?
Doesn't actually look too bad.
Okay.
I think just getting a little bit forward here with the shoulder position, so you can see when he starts to pull, he's a little bit over the bar. The hip position doesn't even look too bad. I think if he just sat back into it a bit more,
right,
he'd be in a more ideal position. Totally.
I think I completely agree. Like, we can see the shoulder blades pretty far out in front of the bar there. So as soon as he pulls, he's going to get pulled forward off the floor, like that, right? The other thing I'd recommend is maybe trying to get a little bit more depression. I think we could even out this back angle, like Danny said, by kind of sitting back a little bit. He mentioned in his email that he says he kind of feels it mostly in his lower back and not his hamstrings. And I think that's partly because he's too far forward. A lot of the times when we get that sort of sensation that like, oh, the back's doing all the work, we're just a little bit on the toes. And a lot of times if you can get yourself a little further on your heels, and maybe, you know, even out the back angle a little bit, get a little bit more neutral in that start position, right? Force a little bit of extension as you set up. As well as, like Danny said, just kind of get back over the bar a little. I think that's going to go a long ways for you. So hopefully that helps, Uriel. All right, up next we got Skylar. Skylar's doing some squats here. This is 215 pounds for a set of 5 at 9, he says. He's 21 years old, 155 pounds, and he actually mentioned a few things that he thought he was doing wrong. So he figures that the bar kind of falls forward on his ascent, and that his bracing's a little bit inconsistent. What do you think, Danny?
I don't see too much falling forward, actually. I think if we just played around with his elbow position a little bit, got them more in line with his torso, that might reduce what he's feeling coming out of the hole there. Yeah.
Again, I think I'm going to agree with you here. And I think one of the biggest things is maybe that his grip is just a bit too narrow. And I think that's forcing his shoulders into a bit of a weird position, right? I think if we allowed him to widen up, then, like you said, we'd be able to get the elbows a little more in line with the trunk. And specifically when we get into the bottom of the squat here, because you can see his elbows are still kind of pointed back, which generally means his shoulders are a little bit elevated, kind of forward. In terms of the bracing, I am seeing a little bit of an emphasis on extension as we drive up. So we can see as he comes out of the hole, he's really focusing on trying to drive his chest up and like overextend almost.
Keep those ribs down.
Exactly. So I would get you to try to brace a little bit more ribs down and try to like keep the trunk just a little bit more solid throughout. And I think that if you can get a little bit more ribs down brace, you're probably gonna be able to maintain it better throughout the set. What do you think of his depth there, Danny? Do you think we're in or not?
3 reds.
3 reds. She's ruthless. All right, so it might be the angle. You might be pretty close. I think some of these are on the line, but we might either, actually I would say both, film from more like a straight on side angle and maybe try to refine that depth a little bit. Other than that, I think, yeah, it is looking pretty good, but a little bit extra extension there, and let's widen the grip so you can get those elbows in line with your body and actually pull the shoulder blades down your back, because right now you're shrugged up, and that's why the elbows are pointed backwards.
Could mention like the shoes too. I noticed like as he comes up, he gets pretty forward on his toes, and that's likely probably due to that shoe.
Yeah, you can see that there. He kind of rolls onto the ball of his foot. So a lot of the times when we have a heel like that and it's really cushiony, we tend to kind of sink into it and get maybe a little bit wobbly, and that can lead us to have some balance issues in the sagittal plane. Thank you for the kind viewers who corrected me on that. I was calling everything frontal plane, moving forwards and backwards, but yeah, it's been a while since my A&P classes. Up next we have Arttu, D2. And he's been training 2 years now. He says he's gained 20 pounds, 20 kilos actually of body weight.
Nice.
So good on you, man. And this is a set of 4 at 72.5 kilos. So he says he notices that his arch kind of disappears when he unracks, but he's not sure if there's anything else or like how to solve the unrack issue. You seeing anything? specifically?
I'm kind of wondering like if there's any leg drive going on right now. Looks to me like the feet are very in front of the bench.
Let's see if I can open this up in a different player. I still think you're exactly right about the like very distinct lack of leg drive though.
Yeah, just nothing anchoring the upper back into position.
So in order to get into that arch and stay in that arch, and it's good that you notice that you don't have a whole lot after you unrack, because like we got a little bit of a sort of arch, a little bit of extension there, but as soon as you unrack, so that's
there
like,
we go, yeah.
Do this the whole set, my man. You got it figured out. You just need to keep it on, right? There's no reason that you should just go back to being completely relaxed after you unrack. Like especially given that you understand how to use leg drive and get your chest up, just stay there. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. So like find that tension and maintain that tension more.
And I know for me when I was like lifting in like a commercial gym and I couldn't set the rack heights, a cue I kind of used that worked really well after I unracked was pulling my shoulder blades down towards my butt while I was on the bench, and that seemed to get me in a better position.
Right, so like after he unracks and before he starts the rep kind of thing?
Yeah, when you can't really pick your rack height, it doesn't look
right, because it looks like he's unracking from pretty far back too.
Yeah.
Like he's having to kind of reach almost back over his head to get the bar out and bring it out. So then at this point, like I usually cue people to pull the bar down because it helps get the same thing, but you can think about pulling the shoulder blades down here as well. But basically, we just want to get back into this position that you were in because it was so good until you unracked, and then try to maintain that throughout. And in terms of the leg drive, what do you think of his like foot position and stance and stuff?
I feel like his feet could be back a little bit further.
Back this way?
Yeah.
I think that would help contribute a little bit more to leg drive. If you can like kind of pull your legs back a little more. We do have kind of the knee below the hip, which for whatever reason is sort of the general heuristic, which seems to, for most people, kind of help contribute to leg drive, but it doesn't seem like we're using as much as we can, because obviously, again, this was really telling that we saw you do that at the beginning and then flatten right out.
And I think like it's pretty common with new lifters to only use leg drive once the bar's on the chest.
Right.
So we have to think about using the leg drive right from the start as soon as we unrack.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the time the bar comes out to the time the bar goes back in, keep that leg drive on. And I think that'll help with that kind of like extra shoulder flare. Like it looks like his shoulders are flaring out a bit as he presses. And I think if he was starting in a bit of a better position with his shoulders more down and more leg drive, and you can see you're totally right. When he goes to press, he's got a little bit more leg drive.
Yeah.
So we just need to make that more consistent. All right, now we've got David. David says he's shifting from conventional and kind of learning the technique of moving over to sumo deadlifts. He says his butt's been shooting up a little bit. He's not sure if that's an issue or if there's too much of that going on. He's been lifting almost 2 years. I'm gonna skip some of this stuff at the beginning. Lifting about 2 years and seems to be plateaued at about 130 kilos. So we'll take a look at this. So what do you think his butt's like shooting up too much when he starts the pull?
A little. Nothing crazy though. Maybe adding some pause deadlifts in to practice.
So trying to get him to focus on that bottom of the range of motion a little bit.
Maybe a little bit more there.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like a hybrid conventional sumo pull going on
you
right
can
now.
totally see the conventional tendencies coming through here. And I think part of that is just going to be like, okay, once you get into this position, number one, it looks like you're a little far forward. So I think we're getting a shift back because, well, we're too far forward. So before we get the bar moving, everything kind of shifts back. And we're getting a little bit choppy there, but there you go.
Yeah.
So if you can keep a little bit more of a vertical shin angle and work on keeping your hips down, like generally speaking, you know, we kind of coach to get nice and tight and then use the quads to really feel like you're pushing the floor away. I think that's kind of how I like to conceptualize the deadlift. And if you can really get that feel of push and trunk tightness, you're going to see a lot less of the butt kind of shooting up there. What do you think about the grip? Do you think that's too narrow?
It looks pretty narrow. And you can see like he loses his back position right off the floor in the upper back.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that oftentimes I know with most of my clients and with myself, like if I grip too narrow, I just can't get my shoulders set properly. So I find like adding an extra inch or so, going a bit wider on the grip can often really help with even just like feeling like you can set your back better.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Carlo. So Carlo says his PR squat is 155 kilos, but he hits 130 for 6 here. So he's not sure how to improve his 1RM. He says maybe he falls a bit backwards on the descent, and he's wondering if he should narrow his grip or play with his stance, and kind of how to progress. So it sounds like maybe his like rep strength is a fair bit better than his ability to handle sort of top end loads. I think it overall looks pretty darn good. We definitely see on that rep he gets caught pretty far forward. The final rep there, he gets way on his toes.
Yeah. Just relying on his quads so much.
So, I mean, there's maybe a bit of a lapse of tightness into the bottom, right? Like he kind of has to re-tighten out of the hole every rep. So there might be something to that, like just trying to maintain more tightness. Maybe doing some paused work or tempo work. I think his upper back position looks pretty good. What about his stance? What do you think about his stance?
Maybe a little bit wide for him. You can see his knees are caving a little bit coming out.
Yeah, I think that might be something worth investigating. A lot of the times, like when we see that little bit of knee cave, one of the ways we can try to fix that is just pulling the stance in a little bit. So we're a little more straight up and down from like ankle to knee when we hit that midpoint of the lift. So what about programming considerations? If you have an athlete who's, able to hit 130 for 6, but fails 160, in theory, we should probably be able to move a little bit more weight than that. Well, what kinds of sort of protocols or programming, considerations would you make for an athlete that had that kind of problem?
In this case, it looks like he struggles coming out of the hole. So I would probably get some exposure to the like pause squats with lower rep ranges and getting a little bit heavier weight on his back, learning how to handle that kind of weight.
Right. I think I'd probably incorporate some singles and have them like play
singles,
around
triples.
some stuff in the heavier rep ranges. Because obviously, like, you're good at sixes, so maybe that's a worthwhile thing to keep in your programming. But I would maybe start off with like a single at 88-90%, somewhere around that, like 7.5 to 9 or 7.5 to 8 RP, just to get a little bit more exposure and get more used to and practiced moving those heavier weights.
Personally, I'd like a 6 rep max bench competition, but
we can't always get what we want, right? All right. So next up we have John. He's doing some bench press. John is 23 years old. He says he weighs about 155 pounds. He's been working out for about 2 years, and he's doing some fives. So he went from 176 pounds 7 weeks ago, I think he said, to 198 pounds now for his fives. So it sounds like he's making a fair bit of progress and kind of steadily chipping away at it. But we're going to leave this one up to the audience, so I want everybody out there to go ahead and head down into the comments section below and leave your constructive criticisms for our boy John here. And let us know what you think John could maybe do a little bit better. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Danny for coming and helping out
thanks
today.
for having me.
And we'll see you all next week.